Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what.
Hi, I'm Ray.
And I'm Steph,
And this is the Psychom Hotline.
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Wild and free.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Steph.
Hi, Alex. Hi. Thank
So
you for
good to have
having
you
me.
with us.
We have our BFF on here.
We totally
I'm
did not
so
talk for
excited.
half an hour before this and did all of our catch up. No, this is the first time we're saying hello
Yes.
to you.
Yes, we
Secret
haven't said
catch-up.
anything yet.
Anything.
So yeah. No secrets. No
No
tea.
secrets, no
nothing.
tea, no juicy gossip.
No, never.
Maybe
If
we
it's
should
us,
start like a
never.
Patreon, like really like $1,000 subscription with like the
Ooh.
juiciest secrets and gossips. Can we get
The real
there?
tea.
The real
Alex and I
tea.
will get kicked out of our Discord so fast.
I know. We'll lose all our clients, but we'll be happy. We'll be happy
Exactly.
and free.
But exactly. Then we'll run out of stuff to talk about. We're like, damn it.
For those who might not know Alex, again, how? And we will ask that question every time we bring in a guest. But Alex is like a really multi-talented person. And I think one of the things that I would say, suffice to say, is that when we were in the fellowship together, I think I was looking up Alex and I found these like YouTube videos from like a billion years ago before YouTube was
Dang,
cool.
calling her ancient. Dang.
I know, I'm
Before any of
old.
us were doing YouTube. Like, and it wasn't just like Alex to camera. It was Alex like dressing up as this like I don't know, like the 1800 lady or something like that, talking about genetics, like having the storyline, having characters, and I'm like, oh my god, Alex was doing this before it was cool. Anything, doing these trends that we are doing now. And I've always appreciated that you're not just a science communicator in terms of like you talk about different things and you tell stories, but you're a part of like the experimentation as well. Like sometimes I see the content that you create and I'm like, how did you come up with this idea? Did you look it up? Did you just think about how can I make the weirdest thing possible to talk about this? And you're a scientist, so anything from genetics to chemistry to bio related anything, and on top of all of that, you have been really getting more and more into the science of science communication, which I've been really appreciating. See your passion around strategic science communication and the content that you're creating, that, and your latest nerdism, which we're not going to get into yet, is uncertainty, which we are very excited to talk about very soon. So please welcome our Alex Dainis.
You are too kind. Also, I mean, you're my like science of psychom inspiration. Like seeing you do so much deep dive and work into like how to do better science communication inspires me to do more in the field of science communication. So like truly whenever I think about that, I think of you. And I was just talking about you at a conference on Friday about like, oh my God, you need to meet Ray because Ray is like the coolest and the best and just like the person to go to for the science of science communication, because we were talking about like emotion and humor in SciComm, and I was like, guess who you need to talk to? It's Ray. So you've got a little connection email incoming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm accepting compliments. I'm gonna stop refusing compliments.
Everyone else hate on how cool of a friendship we guys have.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of hate, one of our traditions is we start with something we hated on this week. Alex, would you like to get us started?
I would love to get us started. And my hate is going to come off at the beginning like such a first world problem, but I'm going to pull it back at the end here to like a technology thing. That my favorite movie theater in Los Angeles, and there's a bunch of them around the country, is Alamo Drafthouse. And the thing that I loved about Alamo Drafthouse is you go and you sit down, and then they had like a menu, and you would put in little order cards, and you would write down your order and put it in the front of your seat and press a little button, and someone come by and take it. And I loved it because they were so strict on no phones in the theater. And so when I go into a movie theater, like I come in, I turn off my phone. It is not on silent. Like I turn it off. I want to disconnect. But now they have changed the way that you order food in their theater, that you have to get an
With the
app
QR
and then
code.
you have to put your and you have to put your credit card into the app. So then if you want, like, if I want my mid-movie pretzel, I have to like take out my phone in the middle of the movie, have it turned on, like now the screen is growing. Yeah, and like it's just so antithetical to the experience that I want to have in a movie theater. And like, look, yes, I understand that like I can just get popcorn or whatever before the movie and keep it in my pocket and it doesn't matter. But the whole thing I loved about there was that they were so like conscious of protecting that like movie going experience. You could have all these other nice things without your phone. And I hate that so many things now require you to have a phone, right? Like I don't want to have my phone out in a movie theater. I don't necessarily want to have my phone out at a restaurant to order food, right? Like I want to have my phone off and in my purse so that I'm not looking at it and so that I'm engaging that experience. And like I went to this conference that I mentioned on Friday, and I understand, like, I think this is a useful tool. I do it too. But they had those little like check-in questions partway through the day where you would scan a QR code and then put in your answer and it would like pop up on the big screen kind of thing. And I was kind of frustrated by it because I was like, no, I want to really engage in this topic. I want to engage in this workshop. And so I had put my phone in my purse away. And then I had to take it out in the middle of this talk and pull it out. And I just like, we are so connected to our phones. And I'm so grumpy about all of these experiences that should have nothing to do with my phone requiring me to have a phone. And I hate that that's just part of how we have to interact with our world right now. That is what I am hating on this week.
Yeah. This is so interesting in terms of like when people design gatherings, right? There's like a really good book, like The Art of Gathering, and like talks about like every single day, like detail of how you design, not only just like how people come in, what is the ritual of getting into the space? How do you try to stay in the space? What are the steps to get people like in it? And like I think Ezra Klein ended up like interviewing the woman who like wrote that, Trish, oh god, I forgot her last
Trisha
name.
Paytas.
Who's that?
Oh
Just-
no.
Right, you don't know who Trisha Paytas is?
No.
Okay, she's not that deep in the internet. It's okay. It's okay.
No,
Keep going.
that's good. That's healthy. It's so healthy that you don't know who that
I know,
is.
I want to know who's
It's okay. We'll tell you later. We'll tell you later. Finish your story.
Okay. But Ezra Klein was like interviewing her, and he was talking about like when he has like people over like for dinner, there would be like this ritual of like put your phone here because it's not supposed to be here. I don't know if it was like for Shabbat dinner, but this idea of like when you have a conference, like are you setting your goal of like this is for people to gather around and talk about things? So how do you build this space, this workshop, this conversation to make that happen? And if like the phone is a very important part of it for people to see each other, it's like sure, but let's make sure that that is intentional. And I wonder how much intentionality goes into designing those things and spaces with in mind of like the seating. What are you holding in your hand? How are you coming in and all of that?
Yeah.
Steph, do you have any hates?
Okay, you're asking me. It's okay.
Sure.
It's okay. Who goes first?
Okay, I'll go. I I was on my phone, like my playlist is like the most random playlist, and one of the things that came up as I was like walking was like the soundtrack of The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
That's actually a really good movie. That's a really good movie.
Okay, so
That was like a movie like growing up, me and my brother. My brother was always like super into like Japanese culture growing up. And that was just, even though like the still centering like a white man being a samurai, but it was still like a movie that we repeatedly watched because it was good.
That's what I was gonna say, because like I heard the music and I was like, this brings back all these memories. Teenage Rey, like so into like samurai culture. And I watched this movie so many times. And can I say, I loved Hiroyuki Sanada before he was cool with Shogun. And I actually rooted more for him than Tom Cruise. I just put this out there. But I just love this movie so many times and everything. And like, as you grow up and you learn about all these different things, like I remember I went to a museum like 2 years ago. I think it was in Osaka, and it was like a samurai museum. And they had this one room, and you go all the way to the end, and a framed picture of Tom Cruise. And he took it, and he was like, Tom Cruise is not the last samurai.
Ah.
I snort, sorry. And then he went through all these like pictures and history of the actual Last Samurai and all
That's
of
a
that.
good
Pretty
hook. That's a good hook.
That's great.
It was great. So he talked about all of that, and like I knew it also like some of that history. So as a grown up, I know like in so many ways, like a lot of the story like is how it's framed, how it's even like shot, like where the camera is like, you know, like the Last Samurai is like dead, but the camera is on Tom Cruise and everyone is bowing, and it looks like they're bowing at Tom Cruise. And I watched it yesterday because I was like, oh my God, I crave this comfort movie that is beautifully shot and gorgeous, and the music is amazing, Hans Zimmer or something like that. And intellectually know all the problems with it, which I feel like is like this story of Psychom where you're like, but here's all the facts and data. Why are you still accepting this? And you're like, because emotionally, I'm
Yes.
here with this. So I was like, I will continue, unfortunately, watching it a billion more times, but it's a good movie. I don't know, it's hard to say it, but it is.
I don't think I've ever seen it. And so I feel like when we have our, just like you haven't seen Mean Girls, which came up in a previous episode,
Correct.
I feel like when we have our in-person movie night, like, can we add The Last Samurai to
Yes.
that? Because it feels like I'm
Yes.
missing out on a cultural touch point here.
Yes, I'll do a commentary too as we watch it.
Oh, amazing.
Was it Mean Girls or was it Legally Blonde? It was Legally Blonde.
Oh, it
Ray
was
hasn't
Legally
seen.
Blonde.
No, you're right. You're right. Yes, Legally Blonde.
Oh,
Mean Girls
oh.
is the one with Lindsay Lohan, right?
Yeah.
I did watch that. Wait, did I?
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I think I did.
The fact that you're questioning it though means you didn't absorb
not
it
fresh
in the
enough.
way.
Yeah. Might
Yeah.
be the proper thing. Yeah. Stephanie, would you hate it all?
I have 2 hates. One is that now I'm self-conscious about my breathing. So I feel like I'm not breathing right now.
Sorry.
For context, Alex, before we started recording, could very vividly hear Stephanie breathing in the microphone. Our new pink microphones.
Yeah, for those that are watching, we have Ray and I finally invested in some new mics. Ray has been recording on her like laptop, and I just had like this old Yeti mic that usually works well for like voiceover, but like editing our podcast is like, oh, our audio is like horrible. So it's just like, let's just finally, we're 6 months in. We deserve some cute mics, and so we got some mics. But Ray and Alex was just like, I can hear you nose breathing.
You haven't found the right settings yet, but I was like, what is that like whooshing sound happening in one of their backgrounds? And then I was watching and it was every time Stephanie took a breath.
And
The
like my
microphone's
room is
real
so
good,
hot right
guys.
now. I'm trying to like breathe, and now I'm like, fuck. I'm like, everything's like,
sorry.
is everyone listening to that right now? Yeah.
I just didn't want you to have to edit that out later. I was trying to save you editing time.
Oh my god, so funny. So that's one hate. Dang, the second hate, I totally forgot what the second hate was.
The hate is just me.
I don't know if it was. Hold on, I need a moment. Was it science related? Was it? Oh yes. Okay. So I'm trying to like link it a little bit to science, but so I'm moving in like 2 weeks, and so I'm in the process of like decluttering and also realizing that I have just so much waste. But it made me think of a conversation that I had when I researched I did like a live session at the AAAS meeting last year and got to interview some of the scientists that were giving workshops. And one of them was that she was giving a talk about how we talk about waste. And so when we say waste, like always think of something as like always disposable. Hers was specifically food waste, but it's just like, okay, if we don't use that food, like how do we create like a circular economy for like reuse, like finding value in the waste so then it continues to like funnel into our stuff so we can minimize the amount of waste that we're putting into the landfill. And it just made me think of just like, I'm trying so hard to like recycle everything, donate things, try to repurpose, try to sell. But even after all that effort, there's still stuff I'm like, I have to throw this away. And or I have this like furniture that I've had since 2013, but it's at the point where it's just like, I don't want to bring this massive thing with me across state. And also because we had cats, like it's wood, but it has like faux leather on the the on it, and so the cats of course tore it up.
Right.
And so like, but structurally it's a sound piece of furniture. I just don't have these tools or the space or the garage or workshop to like, you see those DIYers like, oh, I saw this thing on the side of the road. I picked it up and refurbished it and then sold it for like 3 times its value. Like I would do that myself if I had a garage with all the tools, but I don't. And I'm also going to be downsizing to a smaller space. And so like, but like my dresser has potential. Someone pick it up, please. Like I don't want to throw it into the landfill. This is like heavy duty ass wood. And it's like beautiful, like mahogany looking type of wood. It's just the covers of it just needs to be unscrewed and like refabricated, and just a week of like dedication for it. But it's just like so frustrating to try to find like homes. And like even when I drop stuff off at like Goodwill, it's like, oh, I know most of the stuff can also be in landfills, or like this is for profit. So I try to like donating it to like smaller thrift stores and whatever. But I just hate, like I'm trying my best, but even that I'm still accumulating so much waste. And so I just made me think of the conversation of just like, how do I wish we had more of like a circular economy, but then rather just like throwing shit out. But also it's like hyper consumerism and capitalism and all the other isms, so it's just like hard to escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that with my decluttering of my office and the amount of stuff that came out, that I was like, okay, like every conference or every event I go to, I get a notebook, and I'm not using all of these notebooks, and Lulu eats half of them, so it just becomes like, I'm like, don't pick it up, don't pick up swag. You don't.
I know that's also
swag.
Yes.
That's so hard too, though, because like I have like so many notebooks that are branded, and I'm like, this is hard to donate because like who's gonna care about this like branded workshop, or like branded notebook. I wish it was just like a loan, so then it's more easier to like redistribute, because I had like portfolios, or I had like notebooks, pens, whatever, with all like the swag label on it. It's like, is a teacher gonna want this? Like, is this gonna land up in the landfill because I donated to them and they're like, who's gonna want this? And they throw it. So it's just like,
Yeah. So I definitely have a problem with holding on to things because like maybe they will be useful at one point in time. But my husband Rob's comfort show is Hoarders. And so Hoarders is always playing in our apartment, which is very helpful for decluttering because I'm like, I can't do that. But there was someone on that show who was like, by holding on to this thing, you're not like keeping it from being trash. You're just holding the trash in your own home. And they phrased it much better than that. But that has been so helpful to me to be like, oh, like it just is trash. Like that, sometimes that kind of stuff, like this half pack of Post-it notes, like, yes, could it be useful at some point in time? Sure, but it's not actually going to be useful to someone. It is already trash. I'm just holding that trash in my house and I have to let it go. And that like unlocked something in my brain where I was like, yeah, I just gotta, sometimes you do just have to throw it out. And it sucks.
I've never
It
thought
sucks.
about this framing.
Right? But it's
You're
helpful.
Yeah,
you're just holding on to trash and like it's just accumulating in your own home instead of in the trash can. And like,
right.
That was helpful.
I appreciate the people that like know how to transition gracefully. They're like, oh, speaking of this, like speaking of trash, what are your thoughts on uncertainty?
I know, we could just be like, we're 20 minutes in, we've already caught up, we said our hates, like we can go to the meat and the potatoes.
We did it.
Just like why we actually brought Alex on was to talk about something very specific, but now we shortened our time because we spent too long on our hates. But as Ray mentioned earlier, that about Alex's recent nerdism of talking about uncertainty, you've been doing a lot of that on your reels, on your personal reels, on your Instagram and TikTok. And we're thinking behind the scenes in our group WhatsApp of I feel like in every episode I always can come up with an example that Alex has done related to whatever trend or whatever thing was happening. So like one of them was like the COVID pandemic, and so I feel like right now, like the parallel is like this Hantavirus that's going on and the uncertainty around that. And so I guess like Ray, Alex, and I were just thinking of like, is this something we can talk about? Like, how do we weave this in? But overall, I guess like what got you into wanting to even talk about uncertainty as your pillar that you're advocating for, or even like a future book that you might be writing?
Yes, spoilers for that book that I'm slowly working on. So this came from the COVID pandemic, where at the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty and so much was unknown, and people were posting preprints and there were articles coming out and the media was reporting one thing and influencers were reporting another. And there was just like all this swirling like information and misinformation and so much going on. And part of my PhD was on RNA delivery to cells. So I was like, hey, I actually have some expertise in what is going on with the vaccine. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make content around this. I feel like I can maybe be useful. And I got a comment on one of the videos that I posted that was not the most legible, but essentially was saying that like you're using words of uncertainty, like and maybe. You don't know what you're talking about. When I was in school, science had answers. And that blew my mind because I recognized in that moment that when I had been talking about all of this stuff about the virus, about the vaccine, I was using words like likely, maybe, possibly. I was using all these words of uncertainty because that's how we talk in science. We are always talking as if like, hey, this is the best knowledge we have right now, but we are open to being wrong. We're open to learning more. We're open to the possibility of something new happening. But that comment really blew open to me, A, that I was using this language without really thinking about why and how I was using it. It's just how I was taught to speak in science. And then B, that the public was not hearing it the way that I was saying it. So I feel like when I listen to people talk about science, I find them more trustworthy when they use that language. But the general public who hasn't been trained in that sort of like science speak feels like it is less trustworthy because they want certainty, because uncertainty is uncomfortable, because they want something to hold on to. So this sent me down a now 5-year rabbit hole of learning about how we use the language of uncertainty, why we use it, what the public hears, and how we can better communicate uncertainty to the public in a way that says like, hey, yeah, we don't always know 100% what is going to happen. None of us have a crystal ball, but we are doing the best we can with the scientific knowledge we have. And often that's really good. Often the best we can do is still really good, but we want to leave open the possibility for more.
Yeah, this really reminds me of as you were talking about like that our languages are like so fundamentally different. Do you remember years ago Bill Nye did a debate with a young Earth creationist? It was on a stage. It was this giant stage. All the people came in. And I think there was like a group of science communicators that were like, there's a fundamental problem with this kind of debate that someone like Bill Nye is using the language of like, we are very like certain, not 100%, that this is, you know, the age of the universe and this is how we know. But the language that he's using is the language of uncertainty. He would never be able to say like, we are like with certainty we can say this is happening, versus the person you're debating is like, it was like, you think this might be it? We know that this is the fact. We are sure, like we know that this is the thing. So how do you hold a debate when these languages are so, you know, especially when none of the two people are actually there to like listen to each other or actually have a conversation, learn about each other. So it's like, yeah. So I wonder, like, do you have a hot take about how we even discuss uncertainty as scientists?
Oh, I have 1,000 hot takes. I have so many hot takes. But I think the one that really brings up for me is like the idea of consensus. I do not think we have done a good job of communicating scientific consensus to the public. And I think part of that is because traditionally the media wants to show both sides of something. So there were studies done. I mean, gosh, I've been using the same slides on this for like 10 years now. So like I bet there's better studies now, but there's a study that looked at the number of scientists who were publishing in either climate change was a real thing or climate change is a hoax, like kind of publications. And it's hugely weighted towards most climate scientists believe that climate change is a real phenomenon that is happening. But if you then look at how many of those people are featured in the news media, it is weighted almost 50-50. Because the news media traditionally is like, well, we have to show both sides. And so you end up getting this like really false dichotomy for the public. And it's exactly the same thing with like the Bill Nye debate, where it's like the overwhelming majority of scientists believe that the earth is, you know, gosh, I'm going to get the exact number wrong, but like billions of years old, right? Like, you know, and the universe is billions of years old. But if you put one person on the stage versus one person who doesn't believe that, it makes it look like it's a 50-50 debate when it really is not at the scientific truth. And so this is something that there's a paper that just came out 2 weeks ago that is like on my desk and highlighted right now because I'm trying to figure out the best way to make a video about it, looking at CDC communication around vaccines, where last November, the CDC changed their webpage about the correlation or not between autism and vaccines. And so early November 2025, the webpage said vaccines do not cause autism. And it talked about the consensus of science that says this is not true. Then they switched it in late November to be, well, we're not certain. And they used the language of uncertainty, but they used it really shadily to be like, well, they're not 100% sure, so they don't know at all. And it's like, no, like that's incorrect. That is an incorrect presentation and an incorrect usage of that uncertainty. And so these people did, these researchers did a big study and they showed groups of people like the consensus statements and the uncertainty statements. And they found that there was a huge shift in people's both beliefs towards whether or not vaccines were safe and also their intentions to vaccinate their own children, where they felt more comfortable with both of those things through the consensus statements and less comfortable with just the uncertainty statements. And so that's the other thing that like we need to be, and again, this is my like favorite thing right now. So like we need to be communicating to people that there is uncertainty, but we need to be doing it in proven ways that take into account consensus, that take into account that people feel more comfortable when you give them a percentage. You know, I think as scientists, we think like, oh, people are going to be scared off by numbers. No, the data doesn't show that. The data actually likes if you give people a number. They love a number. They love a, you know, bracketed range versus just saying, well, it's kind of uncertain. So there are proven ways that we can talk about uncertainty with like research backed data and with consensus statements and with all of that that can make people feel more comfortable with it. Because I get it. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, right? It's scary. If you're about to take a step out onto a ledge and they're like, well, we're 98% sure there's a step there, like that's scary, right? Like that is a scary thing. So we need to be communicating to people like what we know and helping them get comfortable with that. Okay, I have like 5 hours of thoughts, so I will pause. Because Rey, I saw you taking notes.
I guess I have like a few things pop up. I don't know if this just is like replying. This is not going to lead anywhere. Rey, you can probably like lead us into the next direction. But one of them was just thinking of like the original commenter saying that like this is not how I was taught. And so it's just like, okay, yeah, that's one thing in terms of like in our science books, like we're present, especially early childhood or like middle school, high school, like not everyone even reaching high school. Like usually we're presented in this is a matter of fact, like how it is. Even in the language that in the textbooks, it usually isn't like the consensus of like how we came to be, of like how scientists were able to find out how old the earth was through X, Y, and Z, instead of just like it's usually presented as a fact of just like the earth is this many years old, you know? And so I think,
yeah.
And then also just like we're trained as researchers, but this is either going into like higher PhD level of scientific thinking and talking and training. Because even at the undergraduate level, like that's when we're slowly starting to uncover, like depending on the professor, slowly starting to uncover like, hey, this is the consensus of how we do this molecular electron orbital. But like the next course, then it's just like, forget everything you learned about like spin and orbits. Like this is actually how we do group theory, you know? So it's also hard too in that sense, but like, because we're training it, then we're easier to like pick that up. But again, like we're actively training to become a scientist in order for us to know this language and know that science is always changing and evolving, and that we can be comfortable with the uncomfortable of this language. But on the day to day, we're like, not every, you know, like we're the small 2%, 1% of people that have their PhD.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I 100% agree. I've actually been giving talks at like the National Association of Biology Teachers and the National Science Teacher Association to talk to teachers about this, to be like, we got to start this younger, because I completely agree. And the other thing, there's a great book just called Uncertainty out there about like, this exact topic that I love, but it's definitely focused a little bit more towards science communicators and scientists. But they use the example of like the weather report, right? If the weather says like there's a 95% chance of rain, you feel comfortable as a person day to day making a decision about whether or not to bring an umbrella, even though there's not a 100% certain outcome. Like you feel comfortable just like by your experience in the world, seeing that 95% chance of rain and bringing an umbrella. And you don't usually get mad at the weatherman if you're like, oh, well, 5%. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. Okay, Stephanie, tell me I'm wrong. But you also like, you feel comfortable making that decision in light of uncertainty, even if it doesn't go the way you expect.
I think that kind of like points to the importance of the role of journalists and science communicators to explain what certainty is. Because both of you, I think what you were like talking about is super important, is like, how do you understand certainty? And like the more you are comfortable with this language, it helps. The two things that came to mind is like both late night show hosts, right? So one was John Oliver a few years ago when he was talking about exactly what you're saying, Alex, about the communication of uncertainty around climate change. And he's like, I think it was John Oliver, and he was like, we always invite Bill Nye against someone else, but it's not Bill Nye against someone else. So for accuracy, we're going to invite like 99 other scientists on the stage. So like 98 other and I can't remember the number, 98 other scientists all like came conglomerated like around him. It was like a very funny like visual. And this like one other random person is like, this is what it is. So I appreciated about how he talked about like visualizing that distribution for us, so that uncertainty is this one guy, that one guy is that uncertainty, right? And then much later, so very recently, I think last week, Jon Stewart had a bit about the hantavirus communication, and it was directed at news reporters, right? And he's like, why are you guys reporting this like that? It's like, ba-boom, ba-boom, the music comes in, and it's like, every single time they're asking these scientists is like, are we all dying? Is this a pandemic? Like in this like most sensationalized ways, and like the headlines being like, is this going to be another deadly pandemic? And I remember a few years ago I read someone, I was like, if you write a headline where the answer is no, that should not be your headline, because I read that and in my head I'm like, that's what it is. And I don't see an inherent problem with journalists constantly asking scientists a question and getting an answer, because that also shows consensus. But I think the way you're asking this and the way you're setting this up and the way you're framing it, you're that proxy for the audience. So be like, hey, we have heard that from a lot of other scientists. It seems that like this is not this. We want to continue like checking with other people to show that consensus. Do you also agree with this? So the framing matters so much to help understand that uncertainty.
I think it's a big storytelling thing too, that unfortunately the reward system for journalism at the moment is set up with clicks, right? Like you need to get clicks, you need to get people to read your articles so that you get the ad revenue so you can keep doing journalism. You know, journalism has changed a lot. And I think that's also the same thing on social media for science communication, right? Like you need to get those views and those clicks to pull people in. And even if you are just asking a question, right? If you're like, guys, is coffee going to make me grow a tail? Like, ooh, right? Like if I'm scrolling and I'm like, wait, should I be concerned about that? Right? Like that question makes you go like, wait, hold on. Where are you going with this? I want to hear more. What are you doing? And like, I don't know, guys, I'm just asking questions. Maybe, civets eat coffee beans and they have tails. Am I going to get a tail because I drink coffee? And like, no, right? But it's so much more catching and it's a better hook than if I make a video that says like, coffee doesn't make you grow a tail. Like no one's going to stop and watch that video. Right. And so I get that for journalism at the moment, they have to, it's not good. I think the news like environment that we're in is bad. I understand why they're doing it, but I absolutely agree with you that like it is not doing a good service to the public to do that. Even if they're just asking questions, even if they're just trying to report on it, like, and I should be clear, there are people doing a good job of it, but those aren't the ones that are going viral on TikTok from that little clip of just like, oh no, what's going to happen? Right. I've made the very like distinct choice to not talk about hantavirus at the moment. Because I don't have anything I think interesting to add to the conversation. And I think that like there are some science communicators who are just making videos about it because it's really catchy and like I can report the same thing that 5 other people reported, but because it's such like a big topic right now, I can get a bunch of views. And like I don't have anything to add, guys. Like, and I think making a video about it would just make people more nervous. So like what are we doing?
One thing I want to talk about was that like Ray and I were part of a panel, and one of the conversations or questions we were asked was just like, how do we make a living as like a science communicator? And a lot of it is, was for like this attention economy or whatever. But a lot of it is like the balance that we have to play in terms of like, okay, I need views in order to like monetize my channel or whatever. And so we're gonna use a hook or clickbaity thing, a slightly like not a disingenuous clickbait, but it's still a clickbait in order to get the click through. Is my thumb enticing enough? Is my title enticing enough? Is the curiosity gap there in order for people to like go through? And so that funds our science communication work. But then you're just doing science communication for the sake of it. But because we try to have our integrity, is the other like the rage bait content that comes in that you mentioned, Alex, of just like, oh, but like, are we not asking the right questions? Because I fall for that shit too. Like, as gullible as I am, sometimes I fall for that too.
Same.
Because okay, this kind of goes into like the distrust, I guess I can say. So like some content that I've been seeing, one of them have been like other scientists or science communicators that have talked about the Hantavirus, of just being like, hey, like we shouldn't be concerned. Everything is okay. The CDC is communicating this and that and whatever. But then part of me gets fed the other stuff that like feeds into sometimes like my conspiracy theory rabbit holes of just like, okay, under this new administration, with the understaffing and the other things, I find myself with the new bias that I didn't have before of just like, I don't think I can trust the CDC anymore because of just how we've unfunded, understaffed, fired, changed the head of other people. There's a different administration with different goals. But then I'm still like, I know there's still scientists that are trying to do their best work, but they're not allowed to do their full work because of this new administration. So like, what can I trust anymore? And I feel like the uncertainty there then allows me to be more susceptible to people being like, have we questioned this yet? So I don't know. That was just like a train of thought that I just had.
Yeah, because there is some like I think research on like the uncertainty that is like unresolved. You kind of like opens you up to not only more misinformation, but like also like picking up the piece of information that you could motivate reason into something that calms down that anxiety as well. I mean, it depends on what personality type all you are as well, which is the case with a lot of uncertainty literature where you're like, like it's all over the place. And Alex, I want to hear your thoughts on like what do you think the consensus is on like how should we communicate uncertainty, because some places increases trust, some places doesn't touch it, some places it helps, some places changes behavior, some places it doesn't. But I think something that it keeps going back to is like, what kind of person am I? And that would like define how I respond to uncertainty as well. I forgot where I was going.
Also, my 2 cents was so all over the place. I'm so sorry.
No, I think both of these tie so similarly into the same thing, which is that like it's so tied to emotion, right? So much of the work that we do, and I think especially when it comes to uncertainty, especially when it comes to things where it's like, hey, this is science that's interacting with your life, it comes back to emotion. It comes back to people like wanting to make the best decisions for themselves and their family, feeling like they're not feeling worried that if they make the wrong decision, it's going to be their fault, even if maybe they weren't given the right information. And so because of all that, like, I hate to say this, but there's no one size fits all. Like there is a lot of good data that shows that, consensus statements that help. And there is a lot of good data that shows that using visuals can help. If you can show someone a visual of like what a 10% chance looks like, they feel less anxious and they feel more comfortable than if you just tell them the word 10%, right? But even saying 10% is better than just saying like, we don't know. Like there is all this data, but it absolutely goes back to the thing that I think we all think about a lot. That is, you have to know your audience. You have to know who they are and what they respond to, and you have to tailor those messages to them. And that's hard. Like that is not an easy thing to do. That is not a one size fits all. And I think it comes back to all these fundamentals that we've been talking about in science communication forever, of like being a part of the community and like getting those trusted leaders, because people are going to feel more comfortable with whoever it is, right? Like maybe it's their doctor, maybe it's their community leader, maybe it's their best friend being like, hey, I feel comfortable with this level of uncertainty, so I think you should too. Or here's why I feel comfortable. And I think that's the other thing, is like one of the benefits of social media. It has a lot of drawbacks, but I think one of the benefits is a little bit of that parasocial relationship, is being able to be like, hey, here's who I am. You've known me for years, right? Like I have people who say, and it's so sweet, but I'm also like, oh gosh, please don't watch those videos anymore, who are like, I've been watching your videos for a decade, right? Like I've been watching your videos since pre-grad school kind of thing. And they've been following me for so long. And I, A, am so grateful for that. But B, I think it gives me an opportunity to just talk to them like a human and be like, yeah, you've seen me honestly like grow up a little bit. You've like seen my science communication change. Like you've seen my thought process. And this is why I talk about uncertainty and the science of science communication more now than I used to, because I think that is the best way for me to be transparent and honest with my audience, is like, here's how I'm thinking through this, and here's why I'm delivering this message to you in this way. Because no matter who you are, like you're delivering a message in a certain way. If you're smart about it, you are thinking through like how you deliver that message and why you do it in that way. And I think some people are scared of talking about that because they're like, oh no, people are going to think I'm trying to manipulate them, or people are going to think I'm trying to market to them. But I've actually been struggling recently. I really want to make a video about why I make science communication videos. And, you know, a lot of that is like feel good stuff, but another part of it is that it's my job, right? And like, so there is a part of it that's like, I have to get paid, but you're not the person, except for my lovely patrons who are so wonderful. But like you, viewer, are not the person paying me, right? Like, so I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm not trying to get something out of you, but like, I do want to acknowledge that I get paid, not for my own Instagram videos, those are free, but like, you know, when I make a video with the American Chemical Society, like they are paying me. When I make a video with the Museum of Science, they are paying me. But that's part of why I do it, but it's not the whole reason. And like, I'm not out here trying to sell you a supplement, guys. Like, I'm making a video about uncertainty in science communication for $0 because I care about you understanding it, and because I want you to like be able to navigate your life better. And because like I could be out here making, I mean, I don't think they'd be good, but like I could be out here making comedy skits and getting paid to make those kinds of videos, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Like that doesn't feel like I'm contributing to like humanity. I'm getting very deep on this, but like I think this is a long answer to say that like I think that humanization of scientists and science communicators that we have been talking about for so long that it almost feels like a trope at this point so matters when it comes to communicating this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I think it's hard too, because it's like in the sense of like everything is a parasocial relationship of just like how influencers and podcasters have and podcasters have like influenced decision making of the public that led to the new administration and whatnot. And so it's just like how do we have a consensus on social media when everyone is an expert to some capacity now?
Yes. So there was a Pew Research study that came out on May 7th. So like a week and a half ago from when we're recording now. And it said that half of US adults under 50 say they get health and wellness information from social media influencers or podcasts. That's not the only place they get it. But the thing, and like all this information, like I think anyone who works in the space needs to read this study. But the thing that got to me most, and this is the part that isn't up right now, so I will have to like, okay, here we go. They ranked the top 10 health and wellness influencers on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And they talk in their methodology about how they do this, but they're basically looking at like people who talk about these topics, whether or not they claim that they are actually a health or wellness influencer. And I had to look up some of these people because I didn't recognize them. And when I did, like one of the ones in here, Sasha Petercy Schaefer. And I was like, who is that? and it's an actress. Like she's an actress, and I guess she does a lot of like wellness and health content and like water content and this kind of stuff, but she's ranked like number 2 on Instagram of like health and wellness creators. And I don't think I don't know this woman. I haven't asked her, but like I don't think she has intended to be that. I don't think she has like self-styled herself to be that, but she is where a lot of people are getting their like health and wellness content. And you get these like parasocial relationships with people who, again, I know nothing about her content, other than the fact that it looks like her claim to fame is that she is an actress. I do not know how correct or incorrect it is, but the fact that so many people are getting that content from her was shocking to me, was really, really shocking to me, because again, maybe I'm going out on a limb, but I don't know that she has done research into the science of science communication. And so like, what is she presenting? How is she presenting it? And like, do the people who are getting that information ask that? And this Pew Research study basically said no, that like people aren't looking into who these people are. You know, a lot of them are just influencers who sort of found themselves in this space because, hey, selling supplements is like a very, and I'm not saying this person does, but like many of these people do. And like, that's a lucrative business right now. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think also like feeding into like the uncertainty of just like, okay, how like the whole Maha movement was really sparked by like um the lack of transparency from the pandemic, but also like food is a huge thing for them. So like Ray sent me a reel the other day that was super interesting in terms of like the comments that we got. It was just like this person, he created a company. He was praised for his entrepreneurship of like like extracting juice from grapes and using that to like coat to preserve the longevity of fruits. And so like he's using, in terms of like, instead of using pesticides like or
Yeah.
whatever, some other type of like synthetic chemical, he's using like a food extract to for as a safer alternative to allow fruits to stay on stands longer. So you would think
Okay.
it's hitting like this is natural, you know, like in the marketing of like you're greening it, you're removing pesticides or whatever. But then when you see the comments, it was so crazy, or not crazy, but different in terms of just like because it was funded because he ended up getting seed funding from Bill Gates to like grow, to
Oh.
like get more money to like make it into a bigger business. And then people in the comments are just like, anything with Bill Gates is like, you know, bad. And then another thing was just like, I don't want people putting stuff on my food, period. Like, I don't want, like, we shouldn't be putting stuff on our food, whatever. Like, we should know what's being put on our foods. Like, this is why we don't trust the FDA. The FDA is bought out. This is bought out. Bill Gates is bought out. And so, but it feeds into like the fearness of just like, because of, I don't know if this is uncertainty or it's just like a lack of transparency, but I guess it feeds into also just like the journalism marketing of it all, of just like, I don't know where I was going. It's just like a strong emotion in terms of the of how even science is done or performed. I don't know.
I
We can
think
cut this out.
no, because I think you hit on something important there, that like Ray hinted earlier that maybe I'm working on a book about this, because I've been like giving talks about this for a while and I've been looking into this for a while. But one of the things that's been really hard is that uncertainty feels so connected to all those other things. Like it is intrinsically tied to emotion, to that trust you were just talking about, to like these social relationships, like having to sit down and be like, the research out there is almost overwhelming because it is so tied to all these other things that, yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think that is the uncertainty. And I think it is all those other things too. It's so hard to pull them apart. And I don't know that you can, but I'm trying to for chapters, and that's so tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One story that came to mind, and I think being a psychon person, I'd really overthought that. Well, I never think of myself as like a vaccine hesitant person or like vaccine denial or anything like along those realms. I'm like, I am all the way pro-vaccine. Now, the thing that I forgot about is that, especially when it gets to like your children, like I think, especially like vaccinating your children is like a whole other game. I have a dog, right? And dogs need vaccines. And my husband's family, they have had like Portuguese water dogs for the longest time. We always had Portuguese water dogs. our dog is a Portuguese water dog, and they have had like their own, like, these are the vaccines that they're getting, this is what they do, so they know what they're doing. And they have always like worked with like, especially like one or two like people that were like expert that were like, yeah, your dog gets like these vaccines, this one they don't have to get because like the side effects are like really high and they don't really need it. I think it was lepto, I actually can't remember what it was. So naturally, like, I listened to them and we listened to this one expert. So Lulu has all of her vaccines, and when she was a puppy, we went to the vet. We were like, okay, this one we don't need. And I didn't think about it. I didn't read about it because I'm like, someone else said it. Um, we're not gonna get lepto or whatever. Years, like 2 years or something passed, we went to this like new vet. There's this woman who were really this vet doctor that we really really like, and she really took the time to talk about all these different things, this other problem that Lulu had. I was like, this is like the best doctor I've ever had, really connected, really like played with Lulu, and I was like, oh my god, like she sees the cuteness of my dog, so I love her because she loves my dog. And at some point when she was sitting, it was like, okay, like I see in the record, like your dog doesn't have, I think it was lepto. She didn't get lepto, and we're like, oh yeah, we have heard that like there's like side effects that could be dangerous, and so we're just not gonna get it. And she said, okay, yeah, that's a possibility, but you're in this area where this could happen, and I could tell you, I have more dogs in ICU from getting lepto than dogs that have had side effects of lepto. And I had to have some really difficult conversation with the owners. And she said that, and in my head instantly, like both me and Michael were like, oh, we're gonna get the vaccine. You know what I mean? And I was this like combination of like, yes, there is some uncertainty about like the side effects of this, but let me give you an image of what that uncertainty looks like. I haven't had an ICU dog because of the vaccine, but I have them because of the disease. And the emotion of like having to have like given this news to an owner. And before that, the work that came that was like playing with my dog and talking to me and hearing me out and not saying like, well, you're an idiot, or like, oh, how irresponsible. She was like, yeah. But also these dogs were in this other area when they probably grew up, which was not something that you had to worry. Does your dog do this and this and this? Then yeah, they probably should get it. So it was like, I think it's like a universe around uncertainty, which you all were bringing up, that like it's about trust, it's about relationship, it's about visualizing it, it's about stories, about all of these things. And at the end of the day, communicating uncertainty is complicated, and we don't have the answers of like, should we or should we not. But I think if there's one thing that we do know is that if I don't communicate uncertainty as a scientist, and I'm very pretending to be sure, and then something changes and people were like, you seem very confident when you said that, did you lie? Then that trust is so broken, and the
Yes.
rebuilding of that is gonna be a whole undertaking.
Yeah. Man, that's like the perfect example, right? Because she did all the right things. She communicated with empathy. She built a relationship. She like gave you specific examples. Good kudos
Yeah.
to your vet.
Yeah.
That's like an
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
But
Alex,
also-
can I? Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Stephen, and I'm gonna ask something to Alex.
Okay, well, two things came to mind in terms of like Ray. You also were in a spot like you were also open to changing your mind,
Yes,
because you could have also
100%.
been like, well, I trust this other expert more, and they said I don't need it, so I'm just going to stick with like that person because I trust them more, rather than being open to new information.
Mhm.
And then that story also made me think of, this is just an anecdote, this has nothing to do with anything, but if you guys watch The Pit, where
I was thinking that too. I was thinking that
Where
too.
Robbie-
I was like, I'm not
where
going to
the-
bring up the pit. I'm not going to bring up the pit.
But yeah, but I'm thinking of visuals of
Wait,
just
what
like,
was the? What's the example? I don't know which
that,
one you're talking
oh, I'm gonna
about.
share. I'm gonna share, Ray.
I'm gonna share it.
Wait.
Slow down, Ray. Calm down.
Yeah, let me speak. No, just kidding. Well, in The Pit, there's a child that came in, as a brother and a sister. The brother collapsed. The sister called 911. He was broken out into hives, had a huge fever. Turns out he has measles. His parents were at the movie theaters. They had to call the parents to come in, and the mother refused to allow them to take a sample out of his spine in order to test for whatever, run some kind of test so then they can treat him. And so like Robbie was like, had to pull the husband aside, get him away from the wife, and be like, this is like, he brought him in to see another dead body and use the visual of like someone being dead, being like, this is going to be your son soon. if we don't do what we need to do as like medical staff to like save your son. And like Robbie got reprimanded from another person, another of his colleagues, to be like, why'd you do that? Like, that was so, like, you went too far of like showing a dead body to this father. But at the same time, it was just like having that visual allowed the husband to kind of like turn his back on his wife and allow the doctors to do their thing. Kind of like the same parallel to what your veterinarian did, of just like, I am seeing more cases of like children dying rather than like getting a negative side effect from using vaccines. And so like that was an example of like what the pit did in that episode. That was the antidote. That was it.
Yeah. And fear appeals are complicated too, right? Like it's like the fear appeal is there, but you also have to like make sure people are able to like change the behavior and it's not an attack on their identity. Like it's like a whole universe of things, which kind of like also did wanted me to get to ask Alex, like you talked a lot about like for people that are like, what if I communicate my uncertainty and it just backfires? Like, do I not communicate? Do I limit it? Do I lie? Like what is the thought process there?
I mean, I think it comes back actually to what you were just saying before, that like it's so much better to do it than to not do it and then be caught out in a quote unquote lie. Like I think I grew up, and gosh, I'm going to get wrong which politician it was, but like growing up in politics, the worst thing you could be was a flip-flopper. Like that was something that like the news was talking about every night, was like he flip-flopped on the issue, and like changing your mind publicly was seen as like the worst thing you could possibly do. And I really internalized that for a large chunk of my like childhood and my early young adulthood, was that like I can't change my mind on things because like that makes me a liar, that makes me a bad person, da da da. I think society has moved a little bit away from that, which is good. But so much of science is changing your mind when there is new data, is updating your understanding when something new comes out. And I think that it's, my highfalutin thing is that like, that's the only honest way to communicate science, is to acknowledge that there is some uncertainty. But I think you have to do it with those bounds around it, right? Of like, the example I always say is that I cannot say with 100% certainty that the listener listening to this podcast right now is not going to be struck by lightning while they're listening to this podcast, right? Like I can take all the knowledge I have about where people typically listen to podcasts and how common lightning strikes are and like all this, but I can't say that you're not standing in the middle of a field in a thunderstorm right now listening to this, right? Like, but I can say it is highly unlikely that that's going to happen. And I think explaining those things and really like getting that out and talking to people about, look, I could be wrong, right? We could all be wrong at all points in time, but here is the data that makes me understand the world in this certain way. And I just think it's the only honest way to communicate. Now, I get that sometimes it backfires, right? I get that we have not set up society in a position to always hear that. But honestly, I think that's why it's our job to do that. When more and more students are getting their news from social media and they're being exposed to science through this kind of stuff, like I do think it's on us. I think it is a responsibility to those of us who do this publicly to use that language and to talk about why we're using it and to like help people get comfortable. And I think it comes from teachers too. I think it comes from parents. I think it comes from society at large. But I am firmly of the fact that like it's the only honest way to communicate science.
Agreed.
Or of the opinion. Sorry, I'm firmly of the opinion, not fact, that it's the only honest way to communicate science. Maybe it seems most likely to me.
Who knows? But maybe tomorrow.
Maybe,
I don't know.
possibly.
Well, possibly this could also be the end of this episode. Maybe I'm just putting this idea out there and see how you all feel about it.
It seems
we can
seems
rain
likely.
check, but also it's like a 30% chance of like rain.
Well, this was very exciting and confusing and uncertainty inducing in a way that is helpful, because I think being in a state of uncertainty is kind of close to also like intellectual humility, where you're like, there's so much that I don't know. And I wish that would make us more open to like hearing counter arguments and all of that. But Alex, you were gonna.
No, I think you just said the key thing, right? Is that I think we need everyone to be more comfortable with saying, I don't know. I think that's something that it's hard for everyone to do. Everyone wants to talk about things, even in their daily life, about like, why are you making this decision? I have made this decision with full confidence that I really want Cheerios today, right? Like, whatever it is, people are very uncomfortable saying, I don't know. People are very uncomfortable being wrong. And I think that to get people comfortable with uncertainty, we also have to get people comfortable with those things too. And I think part of the way to do that is modeling that, like, I don't know. I don't know the answers to everything. Like, who does? Nobody does, right? But like, we're trying our best with the information that we have.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nobody does, but also like there's a consensus of this. And
Yes.
so I'm
Yes.
falling for more of that because I think that again, like that the I don't know can also like it's a double-edged sword, of just kind of like, well, if you don't know, then I can't trust you. And so I think that's like always like the hardness of it.
Yeah. I hope it conveys honesty though. If like you're answering a bunch of questions, I love doing this because I think when you tell people you're a scientist or you're a science communicator, people are like, I have questions. And so yes, sometimes people come to me and they're like, here are my 5 questions and I can answer 4 of them. And then we get to the 5th one and I'm like, yeah, I know nothing about dinosaurs. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know. But I think that makes people trust the answers I gave them before that more because they know I wasn't just making stuff up.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So if you're a psychomer out there, don't be bullshitting just for the sake of bullshit.
No. You can't do it.
And don't be policing other people thinking that you know shit when you don't know shit.
Unless that's your whole thing. It's like that's
it
your
is
thing.
some people's whole thing. It's some
I
people's
know
whole thing.
is. I know that could be another episode of another podcast.
Yeah.
But thank you, Alex, for being and joining us. And we love you.
Thank you for having me. I love you guys too.
Yeah, everyone. Like and subscribe and go find Alex and follow her.
Yeah, we'll have all the episodes or all the papers that Alex mentioned. We'll have it in the show notes. But we'll see you next time.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you say or think or do. The way you live your life is up to you.